Hey, guess what? I have been logging and monitoring all your questions from GPT models on Azure OpenAI. Wait, what? You cannot just read my prompts? Oh, but I did, and I found your very interesting questions. Like, how do I delete my digital twin? Oh, that one was for a friend of mine asking, he got some conflict with his digital twin. How do I... MG, stop it, please. How to rock a hairstyle after using hair removal cream instead of shampoo? That was asking for a friend too, right? Yeah. Take off your cap. Take off your cap. By the way, how did you log all these prompts, inputs and outputs? Log Analytics doesn't support it. Well, I added API management on Azure and now I can beautifully log everything. Can you show me how? Okay, then let's go. Hello everyone, this is MG and welcome to another video. We all know that in Azure, with any resource that you enable, you can have logging and monitoring enabled as well. Similarly for Azure OpenAI, you can start as of now logging any metrics from the service. You can see the request coming in, the latency of the request, so on and so forth. But if you want to go one step further to log also the questions that your users are asking through Azure OpenAI or the output generated by OpenAI models within Azure OpenAI, we have to add some other components to the whole picture like Azure API management. And this is what we're going to do exactly in this video to see how we can have a comprehensive logging and monitoring solution for our Azure OpenAI that not only we can track all those regular metrics that we get from any Azure service, but also being able to even monitor all the prompts coming in, getting out of the models, and even token utilized per each request. So that will help you a lot to get some more insights on what typically your users, your company employees are asking from Azure OpenAI like GPT-4, GPT 3.5 models to help better planning on upcoming large language model applications that you might have, or better optimization or scaling your solution. Then let's check it out. Before we start, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you will get notified for the next video. Thank you. Alright, this is my Azure OpenAI service I created before, and the main proposed value of the topic of this video I'm going to discuss is that how we can control monitoring all the logs that's getting generated from the service. For giving you an example, I want to know what kind of questions people are asking from the models deployed in Azure OpenAI and what are the model responses. So I can, let's say, aggregate them later to figure out what are the most typical questions that my employees, my team members are asking, for example, right? Or the total tokens being used by each call. So sort of making sure that I have full visibility on incoming and outgoing traffic all the way to these OpenAI models, up to all details, like even the questions that people are asking. Well, you might say that I can see right now at the left side, there's something called diagnostic settings. And I can, of course, see the metrics of this service. For example, I can see the latency of OpenAI responses. You can see I have been not calling this model too much, as today I was doing a couple of tests before recording this video. But if I go to diagnostic settings, that's the place I can start getting the logs. So how I can do it, you click on add diagnostic settings, you click on what specific logs you want to have. Let's say I want to have all of them, and then you say that I want to send these logs to Log Analytics workspace. This is an Azure service that can host all your logs. You can go there and query your logs and check them out. Or you want to push these logs to a storage account, Event Hub, or a partner solution. I have already done that. You give it a name here like test, you click on save, and that's it. So I did this before, and you can see if I go back to my diagnostic settings, there's a test I created, and it's going to a specific log analytics workspace. If I click on it, that's another service. Like even this one, I can send it to multiple log analytics workspaces. But the challenge is these native logs getting generated under this monitoring service by Azure OpenAI doesn't necessarily capture everything. For giving you an example, it doesn't capture the prompts, the user questions. It doesn't even capture the OpenAI model responses. It doesn't capture the total tokens being used within that all requests with questions and answers from the models. So it's not really that generic enough to capture everything. Then what is the solution? This is exactly what we're going to talk about in this video. First of all, before I continue, I will add the link of all resources that I use for generating some codes or enabling that solution in my Azure portal. So we add the link of that reference to Discord channel, and you can find the Discord channel link in the video description down below. Click on it on the reference section of Discord channel, you will see the reference added. So as I mentioned, the default logging of Azure OpenAI doesn't necessarily capture everything. You can see that it doesn't capture model utilization, token utilization, input prompts, output of the models. But with this solution we're going to talk about, not only capture everything, also it will capture some stuff that the default Azure OpenAI logging is missing. Then the question is, what is this solution we are referring to? This is the solution we are referring to. Instead of me, as number one, I am the user, I'm gonna call this OpenAI models on Azure OpenAI and ask my question, let's say from GPT-4. Instead of I directly go to this Azure OpenAI service or call my Azure Open Service API to ship my question and get the answer back, I wanna push my question through API management service, which is an Azure resource. And this guy here as a middleman will call my Azure OpenAI. Although there are some virtual network settings and stuff on my question will be managed or secured by firewall settings, network peering. We are not going to focus on the network and security portion of the solution today, but the main thing we're going to discuss here is adding or introducing you a new service called, not a new service, something new to the whole picture called API management on Azure. So API management service, first of all, let's talk about what this service is. Regardless of adding this to Azure OpenAI, I want to understand what this one is and what's the proposed value of adding this to the whole picture here. Think about this. Azure OpenAI is maybe just one specific service that you have API out of it. You might have machine learning models deployed on Azure ML, and each of them, they have their own endpoints, so you have even more API endpoints there. So imagine in your company, in your team, in your startup, you will have 10, 5, 20, 100, or even thousands of API endpoints, and you wish that there was a way, maybe a centralized place that I can have all my APIs for other services, other tasks in same unified place, so I can manage all of them end to end. This is exactly the place that you're going to be. API management service on Azure can host all your APIs and orchestrate execution of your APIs based on the request coming into the service, and then this service called your API backends like Azure OpenAI. So the benefits can be security, because I can apply rate limit here. Instead of people bombarding my Azure OpenAI API, I can have some rate limits. Let's say people cannot call my OpenAI model more than 10 times per minute, as an example. So rate limit, IP filtering, I can filter people out of that IP range, do not coming in, call my OpenAI. Or key management. Security is actually one thing. Monitoring is the key feature, that the key reason we are adding API management to Azure OpenAI. With adding monitoring, that means when my question from user goes to API management service will log my questions from GPT models and the answer of the models when it get it from Azure OpenAI. So when I go to the logs of this guy here, I can see all the logs for OpenAI and also the questions to the models, the answers, and the total tokens that we discussed about. So monitoring is something. Caching. Sometimes you have some APIs, not necessarily Azure OpenAI. Sometimes you have some APIs that the response of APIs doesn't change that frequent. You can cache the results of your previous calls to make it even cost efficient. You can versionize your APIs by API management service. You can add documentations there. You can do cost management here. It's like a unified endpoint for all your APIs there. So lots of benefits. Again, that was a whole high level overview of what is service, and the main reason that we're using this with Azure OpenAI is mainly for monitoring for this example. Okay, so now let's go to my Azure portal again. So this is my OpenAI service that I created before. Let's go back to the overview. And now what I'm gonna do, I want to start creating an Azure API management. So how you can do so, just simply on the top, type API management, which I recently opened that, it's already here. And then just click create and create a new one. I'm not going to create that because I created again. You can just simply, with having a name specified there, go ahead and create one for yourself. And when you click on it, this is what you will see. I'm in the overview page of my Azure API management. So what I'm gonna do here, I assume that you already have Azure OpenAI service created on your Azure portal or Azure tenants. If you have not, you have to click on Azure OpenAI or search Azure OpenAI, create one service. If you have access to that, similar to what we did for API management, I created one here. And you know that for calling Azure OpenAI, there's a key you need to know, like a password. So make sure you copy that. You go to Azure OpenAI, you click on, this is the one that I use. You go keys and endpoints. Make sure you grab the key and even the endpoint, save it somewhere. We're gonna need that. Now going back to my API management again, now I want to add my Azure OpenAI as one of the APIs in my API management service. So let's see how we can do so. So as we talked, for adding an API of Azure OpenAI to the service, Azure OpenAI has a key. We just copy that, right? And I'm going to add that key to API management because API management, I'm going to call that Azure OpenAI. But I'm not going to copy and paste the key manually here. So a better practice would be saving that key, OpenAI key, as a secret in Azure Key Vault. And Azure Key Vault is a service that can host my secrets. And then I say to API management that, hey, you want to grab the Azure OpenAI key? Go to that Key Vault and grab it from there. So I'm going to show you how I did it. It's optional, but I would suggest that certainly follow this. So I go to, you can just type Key Vault. There you go. Here's a list of the Key Vaults that I have created before. I think I have something with the name demo. Yeah, MG demo here. I click on secrets. I click on generate. And you give it a name. Let's say Azure OpenAI. Okay, it already exists because I created it before recording the video. So I click on, let's add a random number. Then enter the secret that you copied from Azure OpenAI service that I told you earlier. And that's it. You click on create, you're done. So I don't do that because I created before. And now I have AOAI or Azure OpenAI secret created. So now when I go back to my API management, I can now add my Azure OpenAI without being worried about copying the key. But I haven't still introduced to this service that there is that key. So for doing so, go under name values. You see that I have created, but I'm going to show you how. You click on add, give it a name, test 1, 2, 3. You can have also a display name added, test 1, 2, 3. And the type here, you should say that's a Key Vault. And it's gonna ask me, okay, which Key Vault you're talking about. I click on select. I say that I have a Key Vault with the name, I think, demo. There you go. And under that, I have a secret created AOAI, and I just showed you how. That's it. I click on this one. I click on save. I'm done. That's it. And you see what happened here. I'm not going to save it because I already created, and there you go. So now I know that where API management can grab the key of my Azure OpenAI for calling it. Okay, one step done. Okay, now we just added the key, but how about the API endpoint by itself? Still, my API management doesn't know what endpoint we're talking about, or what is the backend API, which is OpenAI, we're gonna call through API management. So you need to go then to the backend. And by the way, before I go there, you remember that the name under name values, the one that we created name is AOAI. We need that. So now we go to backend, click on backend here. You click on add. Now here you have to specify a name. For example, I want to say this is my Azure OpenAI endpoint, which is the backend that I'm talking about. I already created one, so it's going to throw me an error, but I'm not going to save it. So let me add a number here. And here for the URL, you have to type HTTPS like that. And then you have to add the Azure OpenAI service you created, the name of the Azure OpenAI service. Mine is testmg. Okay, then .openai.azure.com/OpenAI. Make sure you add this too. And that's it. Now, under headers, you know that when you call this endpoint Azure OpenAI, it requires a key, right? And that key header name is API key. So type API key here, and then on the right side, you have to say that. I'm not going to give you the secrets here. I'm not going to copy and paste that. We created that through Key Vault, and we added that as name values here. That's why the name you chose here on name values, if you remember, it was AOAI. There you go. It found it for me. That's it. So you click on OK, and then you click on Create. Again, I'm not going to create that because I already did. And there you go. Mine is got created with the runtime URL that we added. Okay, so second step done. We added name values. That was adding the secret of my OpenAI key through Key Vault, and then the backend, which is my OpenAI endpoint, added also to API management. What is next? Now I'm going to add my API. So click on API. I already created that, and it will be showing that. There you go. It's the one I created, but I'm going to show you how it did. So under Add API, you see there's something called Open API. You click on it, and now you click on Full. So it's like now here's the place that you're going to define your OpenAI API specification, or like Swagger. You're going to tell that how you're going to call the model, how the response going to get generated, how you grab the response, what are different parameters when you call the models. But you might say that MG, it's too much. I'm not going to add all of them one by one. I have to dig into the documentation of OpenAI API. But I have good news for you. You don't need to manually specify all of it. I'm going to give you a file, which I grabbed from a reference that I add to the Discord channel. You grab it from there, and that's it. So let me show you that link. This is the link. Again, I add this to the Discord channel. That link contains a JSON file that you need to upload by clicking on select the file here. That contains the API specifications of Azure OpenAI. You can see it contains all information about the model type that you're going to choose, those temperature parameters, anything that you need to specify in your OpenAI API to call that, it's all here for you. So let me select that file. There you go. It automatically detected a couple of stuff here for me, so I just need to click on create, and that's it. It got created for me, and it figured out, oh, I have some post in my API because of that API specification, the JSON files, and I didn't need to manually specify anything here. But there are just some specific parameters we need to add values. That's why when you click on create, and this is going to be shown for you under inbound processing, click on base, then go to code editor. This part you need to add it also, and that Azure OpenAI endpoint, because we want to have that value where it's coming from. It's from the backend specification that we had. That's the name I used for the backend, and now I got it from here. That's it. Just add this one too and click on save. You're good to go. Oh, I closed that. Let me go to my API management again. Now I have added my API to Azure API Management, but I haven't told that what I'm gonna lock, right? So let's go to that API that you create under, I think, settings. Let me double check. Yep, there you go. You see that I have added subscription required. That means there is a subscription key required for calling this OpenAI API through API Management. Now this is different than Azure OpenAI key, by the way. Okay. So under the settings, there you go. Under Azure Monitor, make sure you enable this sample rate, put it to 100%, and make sure the number of payload bytes to maximum, which is the number I grabbed from you, and then click on save. Now what's gonna happen when I call my OpenAI models through API, I will call them through API management that I'm going to show you how. And then all those inputs that I'm going to track, questions and stuff, will go under logs, under API management, which is here. Okay, so before we do that, let's make sure that our API works. I added the API properly. So I go to the API again. I click on, let's create a completion, let's say chat. You click on test, and there you go, the deployment ID. That's going to be a model name. Let's say, let me actually copy that from my reference. There you go. So the model that I use is GPT 3.5. The API version is this one, and actually there's a sample here. Hey, my name is MG. Let's say this is what I'm gonna ask, like from ChatGPT, which is a weird thing to ask, but I just want to see how it works. So I click on send. There you go. It was my request, and it got to know how to call my Azure OpenAI service because it grabbed it from that specification or Swagger we uploaded, and it sent a request and says, hello MG, nice to meet you, how can I assist you today? So I interacted with my Azure OpenAI service through API management. But that was a test. If I want to code that, here is I went through my Azure machine learning to just have a place to run my Python code. You can run it everywhere, it doesn't matter, right? So forget about Azure machine learning here. Just have this Python code. I'm calling my Azure OpenAI service with this model. We can parameterize them with this version of the API, and I say that, hey, I want to call this model. Then the user is that asking this question, how can I delete my digital twin? And I want to send that request. I grab the response, and the response is back for me. This is for the time that I'm not specifying any key to Azure API management. You see that I'm not putting any credentials, but a better practice would be enabling the subscription key, which I showed you when I was creating the backend API, right? So if you have that enabled, which is by default enabled, you need to do the same thing, but you need to also add the header, something called API management security key, subscription key, sorry. So I highlighted that, I removed that, but before that I also tested out with this key and it worked. And if you might ask how I grab my subscription key, let me show you quickly. Go back to your API management. You see there's a subscription, right? There you go. These are your keys. You can click on show or hide keys and copy them from here and add it to your code, or move them to key vault or environment variable, make it secure. Then you can call it from there. Now, this is the end of the video. I'm gonna see how these logs are captured, if I can see that weird questions that how can I delete my digital twin stuff are logged or not. So I go to my API management. I'm not dealing with Azure OpenAI anymore. So in API management, I go under logs, and there is a, well, you can have so many queries generated here, and this is a place that you can query your logs, right? You have to code to query your logs, but the reference link that I'm gonna add again for you in Discord channel gave me some nice queries examples that are going to use them from the reference to show you what is going to happen. So it will go and grab from the logs of API management, try to see what chat completion I have logged from Azure OpenAI, and they have been successful because the response code was 200. What models, then I'm going to add grab the tokens used, the total tokens. So let's actually run it. It's going to make much more sense. So there you go. It tells me that from these IP addresses, someone has called GPT 3.5 model with prompt tokens 16, 14, with the completion of, or which are the responses of 73, 15, and the total, which is the sum of these two numbers with some average total tokens. So now I got some info about the total tokens and stuff which I didn't have. The model use, I didn't have them in Azure OpenAI. And the other query example that I have to capture prompt or questions, which is this one. Let me run this again. You can grab these queries and run them as is from that reference. Okay, there you go. Now I can see some more stuff. Prompt text, this is what I wanted to know. Hello MG, nice to meet you. This is actually the answer of my OpenAI models to my question. So if I want to see what was my question, I think that was the request. Yeah, on the request, hey, my name is MG, how can I delete my digital twin? Remember, these are stuff that we asked. So it captured them all and even the responses as well, which is coming from OpenAI models. Let me open that up. It actually include all the, yeah. Hello MG, nice to meet you. As an AI language, I cannot provide instruction how to do the digital twin. So that's all. So you saw that. What is the proposed value of adding API management here as a middle layer for calling our APIs? Here, Azure OpenAI as an example, you can scale the same idea to any API you have, not just Azure OpenAI. And with doing so, you can not only leverage capabilities of API management, we just mentioned one of them here, which is monitoring, more logs we generated. But check out API management documentation. There are much more capabilities we can have. So here we enable that for capturing further logs and make it a unified platform for calling even multiple Azure OpenAI instances for maybe disaster recovery or better scalability. I hope you enjoyed this overview video. I tried to show you the art of possibility, but it might even get further customized based on your request. But at least out of this video, you gain this art of possibility that it is possible to capture more detailed logs with adding more services further integrated. So I'm gonna again add the reference link of the steps that I followed. It's a GitHub repo, the queries that I copied, and all the steps that I took in details, and hopefully this video has been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and as always, I read them. Thank you so much. All great ideas started as a crazy dream. They were ridiculed, doubted, laughed at, until they weren't. If people think that your ideas are crazy, keep dreaming because you are on the right path. So keep dreaming, keep practicing, and keep working hard on yourself, because success is not something you pursue. Success is something you attract by becoming an attractive person. So dream big, my friends, believe in yourself, and take action. Till next video, take care.